Chapter 21. Nexus Overclock. He realized that he was no longer bound to just his physical body. There was now another factor which could substantially help him increase his power by a margin. Nexus energy. It was the most perfect energy there is, and if he added that into this equation, then your comprehension defies the heavens. In the face of death, you've connected the missing dots and evolved, instant recoil step, into Nexus Overclock. Boom. The notification had barely faded when the burly leader's massive fist appeared in front of Gray's face, the strike fast enough to shatter bone. But the impact never landed. Nexus energy erupted like a wildfire, fracturing into countless streams that coursed through Gray's body like living conduits. They raced along his muscles, veins, and tendons, before finally piercing into his nervous system, like countless microscopic blades weaving him into something beyond human. Bzzzztwhrrr. Boom. In the burly leader's vision, Gray vanished as if he had never existed. Before he could even register what happened, a streak of crackling, fire-like purple energy ripped through his body, hurling him across the air. Huh. The burly leader's expression twisted in shock as a wave of excruciating pain erupted from within. Sword energy. He was utterly stunned. What just happened? He hadn't even caught the brat's shadow. He suddenly became even faster than before. And to make matters worse, this brat had actually comprehended sword energy. Grinding his teeth, he immediately circulated his true energy of his martial path, desperately forcing it through his body to expel the invasive sword energy. Only after clearing it did he lift his head, in that very same fleeting moment, to glare ahead. Ahead stood the same brat who had just hurled him into the air. But now, he looked a bit different. Dark purple lines crawled across his hands, and his eyes had changed. Within his irises, strange circular patterns spun like a vortex, glowing with a sharp, radiant purple light. Cracks of violet energy spread outward from his pupils, making it seem as though his very gaze could tear the world apart. You didn't see that coming, did you? Gray tilted his head to the side with a cold smile. Now come at me, you bastard. Let's see who's stronger. As he spoke, the two swords belonging to the burly leader's subordinates suddenly rose into the air, sheathed in radiant purple energy, and neatly aligned themselves behind Gray. Zenith Sword Art. Sword Control. You. The burly leader's expression twisted with fury. A mere level 1 brat. How dare he disrespect him? If killing you is the last thing I do, then so be it. The burly leader roared, his voice seething with wrath. From his spatial ring, he pulled out a pitch-black pill and crunched it between his teeth. Instantly, a violent red aura exploded from his body. Arg! He screamed, veins bulging as his frame expanded, his muscles swelling until he towered even higher than before. The aura spread like wildfire, saturating the battlefield in a suffocating crimson haze. Gray narrowed his eyes. Corruption energy. At once, the Nexus energy within him surged forth, colliding head-on with the crimson power. The moment they touched, the corruption energy was erased, dissolved, neutralized, and reduced to nothing by the perfect supremacy of Nexus energy. You will die now, kid. The burly leader, now resembling a hulking demon, bellowed as he charged forward, his speed even greater than before. A cold smile curled across Gray's lips. Nexus energy surged into his nervous system, amplifying his every motion, and he shot forward as well, the two flying swords orbiting above him like predators awaiting their prey. Swish, whoosh, boom. The burly leader struck first, his fist descending like a meteor. The sheer force warped the air around it as it crashed down toward Gray. In that instant, Gray's flying swords moved. Guided by his precise control, they slashed in unison, their sword energy clashing against the corrupted aura coating the burly leader's gauntlet. The collision erupted in a shower of sparks and streaks of light that carved through the battlefield. Arg! The burly leader roared, his rage mounting. With a single leap, his massive frame soared into the air, before he hurled another crushing strike downward with overwhelming force. Gray's expression remained calm. Fire crackled along the edge of his blade as Nexus energy poured into it. Meeting the incoming blow head-on, he unleashed the Zenith Sword Art. Clank! Boom! Both were knocked back, but it didn't take long before they closed the distance again, clashing with renewed ferocity. Each strike sent ripples through the air, distorting air with their sheer force. Gray's eyes glowed brighter than ever as he dodged and countered the burly leader's sound-breaking attacks. Blow after blow, he matched the brute's strength evenly. Die, 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 the burly leader howled, his sanity slipping as he unleashed a storm of fists. Swish, clank, clank. Gray deflected each one with precision, his swords weaving arcs of purple energy that sliced into the burly leader's body bit by bit, gnawing away at his defenses. Why won't you die? The burly leader roared, his voice cracking with rage. Your puny first-level body, how can it stand against me? With this strength, I'm as powerful as a peak second level of the first rank. How can I lose to the likes of you? Gray laughed. Because you're not as talented as me and I'm not even at the first level, dumbass. As he said that, he swiftly pulled an energy potion from his spatial ring and downed it in one gulp. His supply of Nexus energy was draining fast with the sheer amount of sword energy he was releasing into the world. I'll kill you, bastard. The burly leader roared, charging forward with murderous intent. He threw a vicious punch, but Gray slipped past it with ease, a teasing grin tugging at his lips. With Nexus Overlock, I can contend directly with someone at nearly the peak of second level, first rank. Gray thought, his eyes glowing with satisfaction. Then, a dangerous smirk tugged at his lips. And if I push my nervous system even further? Nexus energy surged violently through him, flooding into his nerves and sharpening his perception to an even greater extreme. His every sense flared alive, his vision splitting each motion of the burly leader into countless frames. The instant that happened, the world slowed down around him even more. With the sword in Gray's hand burning with sword energy, he dashed forward and slashed forward horizontally, straight at the burly leader's head. Buzz. In that instant, the glowing purple lines etched across Gray's hands and eyes flickered, then faded away, returning him to normal. At the same time, a heavy thud echoed through the barren land as the burly leader's head toppled from his shoulders, his face still frozen in rage. He had died without even realizing he died. Chapter 22, Corruption Field. Huff. Gray took a deep breath. He felt a sharp pain in his head, as if his brain was about to split open. Yeah, I'm not overlocking my body past the absolute limit again, Gray muttered, clutching his head. The throbbing pain came as a side effect of going overboard with his newly awakened Nexus Overlock technique. This technique was no longer just about controlling his body and forcing out adrenaline. No, it no longer relied on adrenaline at all. Instead, it drew on something far stronger, Nexus energy. The Nexus Overlock technique followed the same golden ratio principle as Nexus energy itself, overlocking his entire body several times over. With energy constantly circulating within him, he wouldn't be depleted from using it. As long as it remained within the limit, there were no side effects. The technique created a precise pattern, following golden ratio principles, forming an internal circuit that spread throughout his body. This circuit not only overlocked his body but also acted as a shock absorber and stabilizer. By doing so, it allowed him to unleash even greater power without suffering fatal backlash, preventing his heart from bursting under strain or his neurons from burning out while utilizing heightened reflexes and reaction speed. That means I effectively have the power of someone close to the third level of the first rank, Gray grinned through the lingering pain. Doesn't that mean once I fully undergo metamorphosis, I'll be able to fight toe-to-toe with a full-fledged third-level first rank? The first metamorphosis was unlike the ones that would follow. It marked the transition from a mortal body to something beyond human limits. The process took days to complete, with the evolver growing stronger by the hour. In Gray's case, his metamorphosis would be even more terrifying. His sister Alyssa's first metamorphosis had already shaken their family. She had slept encased in ice the entire time, while Richard had worried himself sick every single day. But Gray's was different. He wielded a power greater than hers. No one, not even Gray himself, could predict what his metamorphosis would bring. I wonder how I'd fare without overlocking, Gray thought. He truly had no idea how strong his base form was now. He wasn't as strong as a third level yet, that much was clear. At best, his strength hovered somewhere in the realm of a second level. Still, once he fully completed metamorphosis, his power would undoubtedly rise again. And this is just my base strength, without even fully establishing an evolutionary path, Gray muttered, almost speechless. The might of Nexus energy was already laid bare before him. Even without a defined evolutionary path, it completely outclassed every other evolver in his class. And once he forged a true power system based on Nexus energy, the doors to higher realms would open wide. This was only the beginning. I also instantly awakened sword energy and sword control the moment Nexus energy formed. Gray mumbled as the two blades of the subordinates once again became coated in purple energy and floated neatly behind him. I can currently control 2 swords with sword control. Once I get stronger, I should be able to command even more, Gray assessed. Sword energy and sword control were extremely versatile. It was similar to telekinesis, but instead of using mental force, it relied on sword energy to sense and manipulate blades with precision. Additionally, Gray gained new insights into energy itself while awakening inner energy. Attributes. So spiritual energy was just a special attribute. Through this, he realized that sword energy counted as a sub-attribute. It followed the same basic energy pattern as its source, but with slight alterations that made it far more lethal than ordinary energy. Spiritual energy and cosmic energy also possessed distinct attributes. Spiritual energy was deeply connected to the soul, what immortal cultivators often referred to as the path of inner alchemy. Cosmic energy, on the other hand, carried the vast, boundless attribute of the cosmos, allowing it to be harnessed by anyone. At their core, these energies were the same, yet the attributes they carried shaped them into completely different forces. And since I possess the source from which all these energies are derived, I can perfectly mimic them. That means no one will ever notice that I have Nexus energy. To their eyes, it will only look like spiritual energy. Gray smiled faintly. He had no desire for the world to learn that he held the key to the strongest energy in existence. Even he couldn't predict what kind of disaster would follow if that secret were exposed. There was a reason why the heavens had hidden Nexus energy in the first place. They had ensured no one could ever discover it. Only someone like him, with true origin sight, could perceive its patterns and piece them together. Would the heavens strike this entire planet down if I revealed my true evolutionary path? Gray mused speechlessly. The thought wasn't impossible. Of course, he had no intention of doing that. Instead, he planned to create a lesser, incomplete version of his evolutionary path, one that didn't rely on Nexus energy. He already had a few ideas, but he would only finalize them once he finished the first chapter of his true path. As for why he would upload his evolutionary path, it was simple: the ultimate leap. According to online rumors, once someone reached a certain stage, the only way to climb higher was by performing the ultimate leap, and that was done by spreading one's path. Although it was just a rumor, it had been spoken of since ancient times, dating back to the great era of evolution itself. Gray wanted to be fully prepared for this so-called ultimate leap. Of course, it won't be easy from here. Gray shook his head. Creating an evolutionary path was far harder than he had imagined. There were countless details to consider, and a single misstep could cripple his future, cutting him off from transcendence altogether. On Blue Star, there have been countless evolutionary paths, yet most fail to even reach the threshold of the second rank. I'll need to research thoroughly before laying the foundation for my own, or I'd be dooming myself before I even begin. I should head back home. I'm still in the middle of metamorphosis, so I need as much sleep as I can get. The pain in his head had lessened, though it wasn't gone completely. He believed it would ease after drinking a healing potion. At the same time, a wave of drowsiness pulled at him. His Nexus energy, now in a passive state, was quietly pushing itself deeper into his body, driving countless micro-adjustments that would continue throughout his metamorphosis. But before that, I need to check out this corrupted field. Gray's gaze shifted to the ever-expanding globe of distorted energy forming to his right. It was still new, which meant there shouldn't be too many corrupted monsters inside, or at least not any powerful ones. Creating a corrupted field, huh? Gray's eyes glimmered with a mysterious light. Chapter 23, Mysteries of the World. This world isn't simple at all, is it? Gray snorted as he stepped over the remains of the burly leader. I already knew something was unnatural the moment I crossed over. Kneeling down, he searched the burly leader's corpse and slipped the spiritual ring off his finger. A flat world, twice the size of Earth. On the map, it's littered with power cities, and in the very center lies the silver blue sea. The great cities surround that ocean like a fortress. But that isn't what amazes me. Despite all their advancements in technology, This world has never once thought of leaving the planet, never considered reaching for the stars to escape the disaster of the corruption fields. Gray smiled faintly. There is no mention of space here. To them, the only things beyond are the sun and moon, treated merely as sources of light. It's almost as if someone is deliberately trying to hide information from the masses. Gray's eyes flashed with cold light. He felt it was ironic. The main source of energy in this world was called cosmic energy, and yet no one truly knew the meaning of the word, cosmic, or cosmos. Gray emptied out the burly leader's spiritual ring. Inside was a pile of useless common items, and amidst them sat a pill container. Just by looking at the container, Gray could already sense the evil aura seeping from it. He picked it up and opened it. Inside were dense black pills engraved with intricate patterns. The moment his eyes fell on them, his ability was triggered. By seeing the Abyssal Transformation Pill, you have gained insight into the pill recipe and comprehension in alchemy. What a strange name, Gray muttered under his breath as he stored the container in his ring. How interesting. His gaze fell on the burly leader's demonic corpse. Isn't he basically a corrupted being in this form? Creating corrupted fields and transforming into corrupted beings. A world that was flat. None of it made sense. Too much was hidden from the eyes of the public. It is said that at the end of the world lie towering ice walls that stretch endlessly into the sky. Beyond them is nothing but empty space, where anyone who dares step out would perish. And the sky itself is said to be boundless. Even a rank 3 evolver, capable of moving several thousand times the speed of sound, cannot break through it. The world possessed more than 1,000 power cities and 10 floating cities suspended high above the skies. At the very center of the floating city lived the Federation Master, the man who ruled Blue Star with absolute authority. With all the cities under his command, his words were treated as law. And according to him, nothing lies beyond the ice wall or the endless sky. I wonder what actually lies beyond those walls. Gray mumbled, his eyes flashing with doubt. I truly wonder. He let out a faint sigh. Forget it. There's no point in thinking about it now. With my current strength, I can't possibly touch the secrets of this world. I'll uncover them slowly, step by step. The discoveries of today had forced Gray to pay closer attention to the world around him. Until now, he had brushed aside thoughts about this unnatural world, unwilling to let them weigh too heavily on his mind. But after witnessing someone create a corruption field, the very enemy of mankind, his eyes were opened. There was a conspiracy hidden in the shadows, vast and terrifying. And sooner or later, he would be dragged into it. I need to prepare. I won't let my path to reach the top end with just this world. How can this world be the limit when a powerful and absolute presence like the heavenly Tao exists? Gray was certain, there was a bigger world out there, and one day he would destroy all the illusions and fly into the stars. His ability only added fuel to his belief, a talent so powerful it could defy the heaven, and he had been doing so continuously. There were mysterious and bigger power beyond the endless skies of this world, and one day he would reach that level. Nexus Overlock. Gray calmly called out as sword energy crackled from the 2 swords hovering above him. Immediately, Nexus energy surged and transformed into Nexus Overlock circuits, spreading throughout his entire body and stabilizing it for higher impacts of strength. The Nexus energy surged even more, traveling to his organs and muscles. Finally, it condensed into small sparks that rushed into his neural pathways like a tsunami. Buzz. Gray's eyes changed as intricate lines of purple, circuit-like patterns spread from his irises into the whites of his eyes. His purple pupils radiated with Nexus energy. Without saying a word, he leapt straight into the corruption field. Immediately, his surroundings changed. The first thing he noticed was that the space inside the corruption field was twice the size of its exterior. The sky had transformed into a black dome shrouded in red miasma, and at the dead center of the corruption field floated a black star with a constant silver glow. It was a star made entirely out of energy. The corruption field was deathly silent, with no wind. It was almost as if he had stepped into a black hole. He could sense an evil presence lingering in the air. So, this is a corruption field, Gray mumbled as he observed the black star. It felt slightly different from the one he had seen in school. That one had been completely red, while this one was pitch black. Out of curiosity, he activated True Origin Insight. Immediately, the world turned white, and the energy flow of the black star became visible to him. Coincidentally, the moment he activated True Origin Insight and focused on the black star, his system awakened. Your comprehension defies the heavens. You've observed Necro Star, containing pure abyssal energy, and gained minor insight into the natural workings of the law governing the abyss, the law of entropy. However, Gray didn't even glance at the message. He was too stunned by the flow and patterns of the pure abyssal energy. Chapter 24, Abyssal Energy. Observing the patterns of the abyssal energy, Gray noticed a spiral. A spiral identical to that of True Origin energy. No, it wasn't just similar, it was the exact same pattern. So, this is abyssal energy. Gray was stunned for a moment before quickly regaining his composure. To him, this only meant one thing. Abyssal energy was another fragment created when heaven forcefully split Nexus energy to conceal its existence. It was energy born from the same origin, yet opposite in nature. True Origin energy embodied birth and creation, while abyssal energy embodied decay and corrosion. But before he could dwell on it further, the so-called Necro Star trembled violently. Its surface rapidly turned blood red as a sinister miasma began spilling outward. Gray froze in disbelief. This cosmic energy of the outer world is fusing with abyssal energy. His eyes widened in shock. Energy fusion. To think he would discover the fusion of energies here, inside a corruption field. By observing the fusion of abyssal energy and cosmic energy, you have gained understanding of energy fusion and comprehended the skill, energy fusion. The corruption field itself is fusing with the outside world, using cosmic energy as the medium to combine with abyssal energy and form corruption energy, Gray muttered, surprised. He had never read about any of this in the textbooks. In fact, it was highly likely that no one in this world even knew abyssal energy existed. As the Necro Star turned crimson, viscous red liquid began to ooze from its glowing surface. The liquid dripped down, cooling together before slowly molding itself into monstrous forms. The instant these abominations took shape, nightmarish echoes reverberated throughout the corruption field. A strange, otherworldly language resounded in the air, drilling directly into Gray's mind. Roar. The monsters revealed themselves. Their bodies were vaguely humanoid, but grotesquely twisted. Where their heads should have been was instead a floating black globe veiled in red miasma, like a miniature corruption field itself. And at the very center of their chests yawned a massive, perfectly circular hollow, radiating an aura of despair and decay. They look like something straight out of a nightmare, Gray muttered helplessly. But fear never crossed his mind. Nexus energy coursed steadily through his body, and he had already confirmed the truth. Corruption energy couldn't harm him. In fact, Nexus energy was its natural bane. It was the bane of all energies. When Nexus energy revealed itself, everything else was forced to retreat. With that certainty, Gray charged forward. Judging from the lack of oppressive aura radiating from the monsters, he was confident he could handle them without issue. Even without knowing their levels. I should probably create an appraisal skill in the future, Gray thought to himself as he closed the distance between him and the corruption monsters. Sword energy erupted from his blade and hands, arcs of purple fire like power splitting through the air. The humanoid abominations didn't even have the chance to react before they were cleaved apart, their twisted bodies collapsing into fragments of corruption energy that fizzled into the void. Whoosh! The two flying swords above Gray whistled forward like twin comets, leaving violet trails as they spun and carved through the horde. Each pass shredded several monsters at once, the sheer speed of their movements cracking the very air. Boom! The ground trembled as Gray dashed straight through the collapsing remains of his foes, his sword energy weaving a storm of violet slashes that tore apart everything in his path. Too weak. Gray's eyes glowed, unbothered as he advanced, his every step leaving behind afterimages that blurred into a streak of violet destruction. It didn't take long for Gray to completely clear out all the monsters in the corruption field. Now, he stood directly before the Necro Star. People of Blue Star call it the Corruption Core, but its true name is the Necro Star, Gray thought as his eyes narrowed, carefully observing the pulsating sphere. This was the source, the thing that birthed the corruption monsters. As long as it remained, new abominations would continue to spawn endlessly. The way it creates these monsters is by siphoning away the cosmic energy of Blue Star itself. He recalled the countless theories he had read before, scholars and scientists alike debating why the density of cosmic energy had been thinning across the world's atmosphere. Now, the answer stood right in front of him. These corruption fields were devouring it all. Eventually, the day would come when Blue Star's cosmic energy was completely drained. Gray didn't know what would happen when that time arrived, but one truth was certain. Aside from immortals, martial artists, and espers who cultivated special forms of energy, every other evolutionary path would wither away. The rise of evolvers, an era that belonged to the common people, would end forever. Sighing, Gray slowly took the Necro Star into his hand. Immediately, it reacted violently, trying to suck away his energy and life force. However, the instant the Necro Star came into contact with Nexus energy, it withered and exploded right in his palm. Buzz. The moment it shattered, the space around Gray thinned, the sky cleared back to blue, and the whistling of wind echoed in his ears. He had officially eliminated a corruption field, even without having an official ranker's license. Then, Gray checked the time. It was almost 6 p.m., the sun already dipping toward the horizon. Nights in the outer ring were far more dangerous than the day. Monsters prowled the darkness to hunt, and the activities of the Tiger Claw gang would multiply as soon as night fell. Having killed 3 of their members, Gray knew he would be in deep trouble if they discovered the truth. So, after clearing the corruption field, he wasted no time and headed straight in the direction of Nova City. Nexus energy surged into his legs, overlocking them, and he shot forward like a cannonball, leaving a trail of sonic booms in his wake. With Nexus overlock, his speed was incomparable, thousands of times faster than when he used instant recoil step. In no time, the towering walls of Nova City came into view, and before long, he was standing at the entrance gate. After queuing for nearly 30 minutes, Gray finally entered Nova City, paying a fee of 50 Union credits. Then, he headed straight to the Golden Chamber and bought a healing potion. His face and head were still aching from the earlier battle, and the last thing he wanted was for Richard to notice his injuries. With Sector 6 so close to the city's back gate, it didn't take him long to return home. To his surprise, the house was empty. Usually, Alyssa would be there, but this time, no one greeted him. With nothing else to do, Gray freshened up, cooked some noodles, ate quickly, and went straight to bed. As soon as he lay down, drowsiness overwhelmed him. In his passive state, Nexus energy had already begun sending signals of metamorphosis throughout his body. The moment he drifted into sleep, a veil of purple energy wrapped tightly around him. His brain received a signal from Nexus energy, triggering the release of powerful growth hormones. Nexus energy fused with those hormones and spread into every corner of his body. Gray was now officially undergoing transformation. Chapter 25. Intruder. The next day, Gray still hadn't woken up. Richard hadn't come home the night before either, and even Alyssa was absent. That is because she was now inside a corruption field. As soon as Gray left yesterday, she received a call from her friends. It was a mission to eliminate corruption fields placed down by the Evolvers Association, and she accepted it without a thought. Inside a corruption field, 4 figures battled desperately against a towering monster. The corruption field quaked with every step of the beast. Its massive body loomed like a nightmare, twisted and grotesque, with a hollow cavity gaping in its chest. 2 jagged horns curved upward, dripping with red miasma, while its head resembled a collapsing black hole, devouring the very light around them. As expected of a 7th-level monster, there's no way I can take it on alone. Evan, Alyssa's most trusted friend, roared. His sword blazed with sword energy as he dashed forward at inhuman speed. His blade carved through the haze, leaving trails of distorted air in its wake. Clang! His strike smashed against the monster's hardened arm, sparks bursting as the beast bellowed. The sheer force hurled Evan backward, but he twisted midair, landing like a predator ready to pounce again. Evan, on your left! Alyssa shouted, her hands weaving in a blur. A frost-laden circle unfolded before her, countless spears of ice erupting outwards. They slammed into the monster's flank one after another, cracks of frozen energy spreading across its flesh and slowing its movements. Further back stood Rock, Alyssa's other friend, a young man of average looks with black hair and brown eyes. He drew his bow of light taut, the string of pure energy humming as it strained. His eyes narrowed. Pierce. The arrow streaked forward like a comet, drilling straight into the hollow of the monster's stomach. The beast shrieked, a storm of red miasma exploding outward in retaliation. Careful, its auras flaring again. Ellen, Alyssa's childhood friend, cried out, her voice urgent. Her palms glowed with soft radiance, waves of green energy washing over Evan and Alyssa. Shallow wounds sealed instantly, and their drained stamina surged back like a tide. Healing energy. Ellen stood proudly at the side, tending to her friend's wounds. She had an above-average appearance, short black hair, warm brown eyes, and a cute face. She wasn't quite on Alyssa's level, but she was still undeniably pretty. Roarr. The monster lunged, its massive claw tearing through the ground where they had stood moments before. Evan's figure blurred, reappearing on its shoulder as his sword blazed with sword energy, the edge cutting down toward its jagged horn above the hollow head. Fall, he roared, his strike crashing down with the force to split a house in two. The horn cracked with a deafening snap, releasing a ripple of distorted miasma. Now, Alyssa's eyes gleamed as she seized the opening. Raising both hands, frost surged violently around her, and a gigantic ice lance condensed in the air. Its glacial tip shone sharply even in the suffocating dark. With a fierce shout, she hurled it forward. The frozen spear shot through the air like a thunderbolt of ice, drilling straight into the hollow between the monster's twisted horns. For a heartbeat, the entire corruption field went deathly silent. Then, crack, the ice erupted outward, spreading jagged frost through the monster's head. Its black whole head flickered violently, the red corruption energy shrieking as if alive before it shattered into motes of dying light. The beast let out one last distorted roar, shaking the very ground, before its colossal frame toppled forward. The impact thundered through the battlefield, sending waves of dust and debris into the air. When it settled, the creature's head lay buried in the earth, frozen solid and lifeless. Evan lowered his blade, staring at the corpse. It's dead. Rock let out a low whistle. One strike. Alyssa, remind me never to piss you off. You guys should be grateful. Wouldn't have made it without my healing technique. Ellen's proud voice came from behind as she came forward and hugged Alyssa. You were so great, Alyssa, Ellen said as she rubbed her face on Alyssa's plump chest. Then, all of them looked at each other and smiled. Everyone, with this, we cleared 3 corruption fields in a day worth of time. Evan proudly announced. Yeah, Ellen cheered while Rock adjusted his glasses and Alyssa stood there with a small beautiful smile which could captivate anyone. Both Evan and Rock, even Ellen, fell into a trance seeing that smile. All right, let's take out the corruption field's core and leave. Evan coughed slightly and pulled everyone back and spoke. The others nodded. Evan walked up to the center of the corruption field. In the center was the Necro Star. Evan flared up his sword energy and swiftly sliced the ball of light down. Immediately, the dark sky above their head returned to normal and the red miasma around the place vanished as if it no longer existed. They could now see the outside world and the soldiers who were stationed near the corruption field in case things went wrong. Today was a long day. Let's head back early and rest before doing anything else, Evan said to his team. He glanced at his 3 companions, gave a nod, and they each went their separate ways. Alyssa checked the time. It was only 10 a.m. She had thought the battle would drag on into the night, but it ended far sooner than she expected. With that, she headed home. By now, her father Richard should have returned from his late-night shift. Click. The door to the housing unit opened. The faint sound of a TV echoed from the main hall. That could only mean one thing, Gray. Alyssa slipped off her shoes and walked inside. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten properly since yesterday morning, busy clearing corruption fields. She recalled there was still some ice cream in the fridge, so she made her way toward the kitchen. But since the kitchen was open and directly connected to the hall, she had to pass through it first. The moment she stepped into the hall, she froze. Her eyes widened in disbelief. On the sofa sat a young man, cross-legged, a tired and sleepy look plastered across his face as he lazily chewed on a slice of pizza, eyes glued to the TV. Alyssa's breath hitched. Who are you? Who is this? What happened to Gray? She instinctively stepped back, dumbfounded. Then, remembering she was an evolver, her expression hardened, and she stepped forward cautiously. The man shifted slightly, tall and imposing, his long hair framing his face. His irises glowed a deep purple, while his pupils had turned pitch black, giving his gaze an intense, almost otherworldly aura. This guy, he looked almost exactly like Gray. 3 giant question marks practically popped above Alyssa's head. Chapter 26. Growth Spurt. Are you Gray? Alyssa asked, uncertainty lacing her voice. She studied his face closely. It was unmistakably Gray, yet something had changed. His jawline seemed sharper, more defined. Having seen him every day, she noticed immediately. Before, Gray had been slightly chubby with an average build. Now, he looked lean, his shoulders broader, his figure sharper and more imposing. Hearing her voice, Gray turned toward her lazily, eyes half open, still chewing on the slice of pizza in his hand. In a blur, he turned back to the TV, as if her question barely registered. "Oh, hey Alyssa," he greeted casually, voice still thick with sleep. He had woken only 20 minutes ago, starving after his morning nap. Without hesitation, he had cleared the fridge, and now, pizza slice in hand, he lounged in front of the TV, feeling lightheaded but satisfied. This was the side effect of metamorphosis. Gray constantly felt lightheaded and fatigued, his body racked with an insatiable hunger as an immense surge of growth hormones coursed through him. Nexus energy worked relentlessly, smoothing out every imperfection, reshaping his body to be fully compatible with his newfound power. He had many plans for today, yet it seemed he would have to wait until his metamorphosis was complete before taking any action. This was only day 1, and each day would bring even greater changes. The higher one's power, the longer the metamorphosis took. For instance, Alyssa had needed 3 days, Gray might require even more. Alyssa felt a headache when seeing this sight. Did you go through a second awakening and become an evolver? Second awakening. It was a rare occurrence where one would suddenly undergo a change and become able to sense energies. This happened very rarely, but it wasn't impossible, and she believed that she herself might have had a hand in this. Usually, second awakening only happened when there was a high-level evolver in your house, where their higher life level would indirectly affect you. But Alyssa was only a first ranker. However, she was not ordinary. She was something known as a true dragon, which even her father didn't seem to know about. And being one, it was easy for others around her to awaken. Thinking back, she realized she was a dragon at the age of 17, the night before the awakening ceremony at the academy. She had even received a message from her mother, whom she thought was dead, along with the inherited memory she received as a true dragon. Her mother, who had been Richard's wife, didn't reveal too much aside from telling her to conceal her secrets at all costs, and to keep the fact that she was a true dragon even from Richard himself. She didn't know what exactly was happening, but she chose to believe her mother and didn't reveal it to anyone. Her mother had also said she would get answers to her questions once she grew stronger. Right now, her goal was to find her mother. She knew she wasn't on Blue Star. She believed her mother was from a different world, one that existed beyond the endless skies of Blue Star. Of course, that was just a theory, as those who went beyond the endless skies never came back. But she believed in herself. After all, she knew for sure that no dragons existed in this world. Just then, Gray's voice cut through her thoughts. "Yeah," Gray replied absent-mindedly. "So, you're undergoing metamorphosis." Alyssa felt it clearly, a surge of energy within Gray's body. From sensing it more closely, she realized that it was true energy. This guy had become a martial artist. "Yeah," Gray replied in the same tone again. "Go back to bed. Don't you know it's bad to stay awake when your body is undergoing change?" Alyssa said in a stern voice. Hearing this, Gray nodded blankly and spoke. "I woke up and ate all the food in the fridge. Now I'm sleepy again. I should really go to sleep." Alyssa, hearing this, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She swiftly made her way to the fridge and, indeed, the fridge was still left open. However, there was nothing inside. The entire fridge was wiped clean, not even leaving vegetables. Seeing this, Alyssa's expression slightly darkened. She realized even her ice cream had been eaten by him. "You ate my ice cream," Alyssa shouted, then sighed. She couldn't do anything about it. She knew Gray wasn't to be blamed. It was only natural to feel hungry in a phase like this. And that was when another shocked shout entered her ears. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" Richard asked with a shocked look. Gray, hearing this, blinked and turned to the source. Seeing that it was his father, he stopped caring and shifted his focus back to the TV as he chewed on the last piece of pizza. Gray. Richard's face turned from confusion into doubt, then into shock. Then, he shifted his attention to his daughter, who was also standing there with a helpless look on her face. She quickly recounted what happened to Gray to Richard, who silently listened. Second awakening. Richard was slightly surprised. Then a satisfied expression appeared on his face. Good, I knew Gray had it in him. He will definitely be able to become a top evolver. Richard laughed as he patted Gray's shoulder, but to his dismay, Gray fell onto the sofa with a bored expression on his face from that single tap. He looked one step away from going to sleep. Quote. The two of them stared silently at Gray with speechless looks. He was so unreactive it was making them worried, but they knew it was due to his body going through changes to adapt to energy. Son, come, let's get you to bed, Richard spoke coaxingly to his son. Hearing this, Gray looked at Richard and nodded dumbly. He was so tired not even his mind was functioning properly. Then, with Richard's and Alyssa's assistance, Gray was sent back to his room. As soon as he lay down on the bed, he drifted away into a deep sleep. Looks like we're eating out tonight, Richard said with a laugh. He was in a rather good mood now after hearing that his son could also become an evolver. Things had gotten better with Gray recently, and this news was the cherry on top. I want ice cream, Alyssa said to Richard, and just like that, 5 days passed. Chapter 27, Heading Out. Next Tuesday, Richard had just come back from his late-night shift. Recently, his work time had changed drastically. From working 6 to 6, it had now become 9 to 9. That meant he could finally go to sleep earlier and enjoy more time with his 2 kids. It's already been 5 days. My colleagues at the factory told me that usually, someone undergoing metamorphosis only takes 1 to 2 days at most. And even you only took 3 days, Alyssa. Richard expressed his worries as he sat on the sofa alongside his daughter Alyssa. It's fine, Dad, Alyssa said casually. This usually happens with second awakeners. Their bodies were originally unable to sense or take in energy. Now that he has become an evolver, his body is completely reforging itself to be more compatible with energy. Is that so? Richard nodded. He had indeed heard something about it before. Just then, they both heard the door to Gray's room opening. Immediately, they stopped whatever they were doing and looked ahead. Hey, guys. From the room, Gray emerged with a casual greeting. However, the instant they saw Gray, they were stunned. If the Gray from 5 days ago still had at least some similarities to the old one, now they were completely gone. This was a completely different person. Standing before them was a young man who appeared to be around 16 or 17. He had a tall frame, a lean build, and broad shoulders. His long black hair was tied into a high ponytail, and his pupils now gleamed with a sharp violet hue, a faint black dot lingering at their center. His face had refined into an oval shape with angular features, his forehead, cheekbones, and jawline perfectly balanced. The sun-kissed tone he once carried had vanished, replaced by smooth, flawless skin that radiated a clear, youthful brilliance. Gray, Richard called out with a stunned look on his face. He hadn't really seen Gray's face during the past 5 days, as he would simply leave food in Gray's room and walk away so as not to disturb his metamorphosis. Yes, Dad, it's me. Gray chuckled dryly. He had also seen his own reflection, and even he was stunned. But this was the work of Nexus energy. It embodied perfection. It was only natural that it would improve his appearance by making his entire body more perfect. In truth, this was merely a small effect compared to the changes within his body. Now his entire being was infused with Nexus energy. Of course, he wasn't actually perfect in essence. To truly achieve the definition of perfection, he would have to reach higher levels of life and become an invincible evolver. Alyssa was also slightly stunned after seeing Gray. She could no longer see the shadows of the old Gray. The Gray she once knew and remembered had completely vanished. Seeing Gray's new appearance only further reminded her that this was no longer the same Gray, but the reincarnated one. For a moment, she completely forgot how to react. A feeling of sadness unknowingly overwhelmed her. But that quickly disappeared when she remembered the old Gray's actions. She still hadn't thought about how to communicate with this new person who had taken over Gray's body. Should she treat him as her brother? She honestly didn't want to think about it, because whenever she did, she was struck by the cold truth: the old Gray was dead. You have completely changed, my son. Richard sighed emotionally as he stood up. Gray was now as tall as Richard himself. Now that you are a martial artist at the innate realm, are you planning on going to the Evolvers Association and registering yourself as an Evolver? Yes, Dad, I'm heading to the Evolvers Association, Gray replied with a small smile. Today was Tuesday, and starting today, he would begin teaching Leah. So he was going to go straight to the Evolvers Association before doing anything else, like researching other evolutionary paths. He also wanted to create an appraisal skill that would allow him to view information on everything with a glance. If he was not wrong, there was a specific Esper ability related to that. But to perform Esper abilities, he first needed to awaken his mind. That meant he also needed to look into the Esper evolutionary path and the method of mind awakening. Even if he was incompatible with that path, all he had to do was comprehend it with his heaven-defying ability, and it would adjust itself into a form Gray could utilize. Since you are going out, you can't go empty-handed. Saying that, Richard took out his phone. Dad just got his salary today, I'll give some to you. Make sure to spend it responsibly. Hearing this, Gray was slightly startled. He quickly tried to stop Richard. No, Dad, I don't need money. Gray said in one single breath. Please keep it in case of emergencies. Huh, Richard was stunned. What happened to this kid? Richard knew his son well. He would always ask for money whenever he went out. But this was completely different. Alyssa, on the other hand, had a light flash in her eyes. She knew the old Gray far better than Richard since they had spent more time together. If this were the old Gray, he would never have refused. It's fine, Dad, I'm just going to the Evolvers Association, and I should get money from them myself after becoming an official ranker. Gray replied with a smile. At the same time, Gray felt slightly warm in his heart. Richard truly cherished him as his son, and he was even incredibly proud of the fact that he had become an Evolver. Richard had always been a great father to the old Gray, while the old Gray had been nothing more than an ungrateful bastard. Yet despite all of that, Richard still cherished him as his own. He worked hard day and night for his children and cared for them dearly. That honesty and devotion made Gray feel unexpectedly emotional. Richard had taken care of him until now, so it was only natural for Gray to repay that favor. Even if the truth were to come out, that he wasn't Richard's biological son at all, Gray had already decided. Even if Richard rejected him from then on, he would still support him from the shadows. Richard deserved nothing less, for all the help, care, and love he had given, even though Gray was merely an adopted child. I'm leaving, Dad. Gray smiled gently. I'll be back by evening. All right, Richard said with a smile. Do your best in the Evolver's assessment exam, son. I will. After replying, Gray left the house. It was time to meet Leah. Chapter 28. Leah's Shock. Inside the branch manager's office sat an imposing, stout, middle-aged man with brown hair and a long goatee. He was looking through his tablet, reading profiles of countless Evolvers. He was in a dilemma. If I can find another talent like Alyssa for the tournament, then my rank within the Evolvers Association will definitely increase by a whole new level. I might even find myself sitting in the seat of Sector 1 headquarters of Nova City before long, or maybe even get transferred to the top floating cities. Manager Victor muttered as he rubbed his temple. But there is no one, I repeat, no one, in Sector 6 who is as talented as Alyssa Lockhart. Forget first-rate talent, there isn't even a third-rate talent who can qualify for the tournament team. We need one more person in the team. Evan from Sector 4, Miss Leah from Sector 1, Alyssa from Sector 6, we need one more. And whoever finds the fourth candidate will personally receive a reward from the head branch leader of Nova City. What will I say to the head branch leader? He's coming back from Blue Spirit City after attending a function there, and he will definitely stop here before heading to Sector 1. I told him I'd find a promising candidate before he returned. Maybe Miss Leah might be able to find someone, Manager Victor. Next to him stood his secretary, known by everyone as Secretary Celine. She had a slightly average face, but her office attire gave her a refined beauty. Miss Leah, Manager Victor frowned. Why did you suddenly mention her? That's because Miss Leah has been frequenting our Sector 6 branch for training. She came last week, and she's here again today. Secretary Celine replied calmly. As that's so, Manager Victor was surprised. Then we should pay Miss Leah a visit. Yes, Secretary Celine nodded. I'll make arrangements with Miss Leah, Manager Victor. Where is this guy? I've been standing here for the past 30 minutes. Leah muttered with a bored expression. Just by standing in the open training zone, she felt hundreds of gazes constantly drifting toward her. Her beauty and presence attracted attention like a beacon, but instead of pride, it only made her feel suffocated. Still, she waited patiently for Gray. She had already called him earlier. He promised to come soon and hung up immediately. But from the noise she heard in the background, especially the clatter of plates and the sound of someone ordering food, she knew perfectly well that this guy was in a restaurant. Miss, they are staring at you. Albert, who stood beside her like a silent shadow, finally spoke. His tone was flat, but there was a sharp glint in his eyes. Would you like me to gouge their eyes out? What are you saying? Leah froze for a moment, utterly speechless. What age do you think this is? If you do that, you'll be thrown straight into a mental ward. She shook her head helplessly. Her butler's thought process was truly different from ordinary people. Sighing, she pulled out her phone again and dialed Gray's number. The next instant, a ringtone chimed, coming from directly behind her. Turning around, she saw an extremely handsome young man walking her way. She was initially surprised to see someone so strikingly beautiful here, but she quickly hid her reaction and acted like she didn't notice. After all, she was a lady of elegance. How could she be caught staring at a man? However, to her surprise, the handsome young man stopped right in front of her with a rather annoyed look on his face. He showed her his phone and spoke. Why are you still calling when I'm standing right in front of you? Are you blind? Huh? Leah looked at the phone with a stunned expression. On the screen, it was clearly written, "Call from Miss Leah." She looked at her own phone. Indeed, she had dialed Gray's number. You, Gray. Leah's lips quivered. She almost cursed out loud upon seeing his appearance. She almost thought someone had stolen Gray's phone and was impersonating him. But no, the voice, although a little deeper than before, was still familiar to Leah. She had a sharp memory, and she especially wouldn't forget Gray's voice, the same one that had once shocked her with his unnatural talent. This was Gray Lockhart. Right, you haven't seen me in this form yet. Gray said casually. What do you mean by that? You, Leah's irritated voice rose. What are you? A skinwalker? How did you suddenly change your appearance? Chill. Gray smiled. I just got plastic surgery. Plastic surgery? Leah looked at him suspiciously. She refused to believe that. This wasn't possible with plastic surgery. If she wasn't mistaken, Gray had also grown taller. That's right. Plastic surgery. It was pretty expensive. Gray sighed heavily. It costs so much these days, you basically have to pay a kidney and an arm to do it. Leah gave him a deadpan look, unimpressed by his acting. Cough. Gray coughed lightly. Anyway, let's start the training. I have things to do afterward. To this, Leah had no complaints. She would investigate this matter later. Now it was time for combat training. They swiftly made their way into the training room, with Albert standing guard outside as before. Gray noticed Albert giving him a cold gaze, but he ignored it. He had no idea why Albert looked at him that way, but he definitely knew the butler was up to no good. The best thing to do was to simply ignore it. Reaching the training room, Leah began undressing, revealing her form-fitting sports attire beneath her casual clothes. Her well-endowed and alluring figure was fully showcased, enough to captivate any man on Earth. After changing into her sports attire, she questioned Gray again. Tell me, how did you change your appearance? She refused to believe it was just plastic surgery. If someone could turn this handsome with surgery, then why were there still ugly people in the world? It wasn't just his face that changed. He had also become taller, with a broad yet lean physique, enough to captivate any woman. His violet eyes only added even more points to his charm. Chapter 29. Sword Control. Alright, let's start today's training. Gray informed her. Lower your power level to the second level of rank 1. Yes. Leah didn't complain and did as he said. She lowered her realm to the second stage of the Chi-gathering realm, limiting her powers strictly within the margin of the second stage. She was a genius. Her abilities far surpassed her peers, and she could naturally skip levels and fight across realms. Even at the second stage of Chi-gathering, she could fight someone at the third stage purely with her cultivation alone. So, she sealed her power in a way that only allowed her to exhibit the strength of a second-stage cultivator at maximum. Gray's spatial ring flashed, and the silver longsword he had bought a week ago appeared in his hands. For starters, I'll demonstrate how sword control works. Huh. Leah was stunned at first, but then her mouth widened in disbelief the next moment. Buzz. Sword energy crackled. Gray took out 2 other swords, the ones he had looted from the Tiger Claw members earlier, from his spatial ring. Swiftly, he enveloped them in his Nexus sword energy. The swords changed shape, glowing a deep purple and crackling with sharp, lethal energy. This. Leah was shocked. Sword control and sword energy. This guy had become an evolver. Second awakening. That means you underwent metamorphosis. Leah exclaimed. She knew it. It wasn't plastic surgery at all. However, with Albert standing nearby, Gray couldn't reveal the truth, that this was his first metamorphosis. After all, Albert believed Gray was a rank 3 expert. Still, I've never seen someone change this drastically from a first metamorphosis. Leah muttered, confused. Usually, physical transformation only happens during the second metamorphosis. Don't worry about it. Gray spread his hands with a smirk. How can a genius like me be normal? Hearing this, Leah rolled her eyes. Sure. Now, stop wasting time. Come at me. I'll teach you sword control. Gray said firmly. In today's lesson, you will try to override my control over my 2 flying swords using your sword energy. As he said that, he charged forward. Swoosh. His figure flickered from his spot, and in less than a second he was right beside Leah. Controlling his muscles, he swung horizontally with sword energy erupting from his blade. His speed was incomparable to before. Just his base strength alone now pushed him past the barrier of sound. That was how fast he had become. Leah's expression turned serious. She summoned her sword energy and tried to guard against Gray's slash. Clank. Buzz. Sparks and energy burst through the training room as their blades clashed. Leah gritted her teeth, pushing back with all her might. Gray, however, pressed forward with equal force. The victor would, without doubt, be the one with stronger sword energy. Eventually, Leah's sword energy faltered, and she was forced back 4 steps. Seeing this, Gray withdrew his sword and nodded. But Leah was speechless. Hey, didn't you say I was supposed to take control over your flying swords? Why did you suddenly attack me? I was measuring your level of mastery over sword energy. Gray replied thoughtfully. And it is lacking. Sword control has to wait. For now, we'll focus on fine-tuning your sword energy. Only by having precise control over your energy can you control swords with perception. How do I do that? Leah asked. She had always believed that unlocking sword energy automatically meant full control. But after clashing with Gray, she realized that wasn't true. She had spent the past week familiarizing herself with sword energy and hadn't encountered any problems while practicing alone. But now, she understood that lack of mastery meant losing control in a clash with another's sword energy. Let me think. Gray pondered for a moment, searching for a way to improve her mastery over sword energy. It didn't take him long. All right, I found one. Gray said. Draw out your sword energy into the world. Leah immediately obeyed. From every corner of her body, sword energy erupted like a violent storm, making her look like a shining star. What is this? Gray was left speechless. Her sword energy scattered chaotically in every direction, unstable to the extreme. Before, he thought she had at least some control. But now, he realized the only reason she had managed to keep up with him earlier was her sheer natural talent. Gray facepalmed. You barely have any control over your sword energy. Honestly, if you had a nightmare one night, you'd probably blow up your entire house from your unstable sword energy running wild. Is it that serious? Leah was stunned. Yes. Gray nodded. It wouldn't have been an issue if you had awakened sword energy later, once your comprehension had deepened. Then you wouldn't have to worry about this. Unlocking sword energy this early has its downsides. Gray explained. Does that mean you can't control your sword energy either? Leah asked. But almost instantly, she realized how dumb that sounded. This guy was controlling not one but two flying swords right in front of her. Obviously, his control was perfect. From your expression, I take it you already know the answer. Gray said with a deadpan look. Leah smiled awkwardly. I'll demonstrate how it's done. Gray said. Immediately, sword energy rushed out of his body. But unlike Leah's chaotic eruption, Gray's sword energy flowed like fine silk threads. They formed a perfect circle and rotated around his body. The lethal energy was so sharp that even brushing against it would slice a normal person apart. He refined his control further. The energy shifted into a triangle, then into the shape of a sword, and even transformed into a blazing ball of fire. The possibilities were limitless. Sword energy, in essence, was simply a form of lethal energy that could be molded however he wished and however he wanted. Quote. Leah was utterly speechless. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry anymore. Sorry for breathing the same air as you. Chapter 30. Leah will become a genius sculptor. Clank, clank, swish, swish. Leah breathed heavily, sweat dripping down her forehead, as she stood in front of what was supposed to be a statue of a bird, but instead looked like a deformed cat. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, every breath ragged, as the thin strands of sword energy flickered weakly around her fingertips. Is that supposed to be a bird? Gray walked to her side with his hands behind his back, his tone calm but laced with mockery. That is clearly a deformed cat. He then turned to Albert, who was now inside the room. Bring another sculpture rock. Albert nodded and made a quick call on his phone, his voice steady as if he was already used to the strange requests Gray gave. I'm trying my best, Leah snapped, glaring at Gray in frustration. Her eyes narrowed, cheeks puffed slightly red, as though she was on the verge of stomping her foot. It had been exactly 3 hours since their training began. Gray had suggested that since Leah had absolutely no control over her sword energy, she should start by gaining control through carving sculptures. After all, making sculptures with sword energy was the fastest way to train. Normally, craftsmen would need special tools and painstakingly chip away at stone, but with sword energy, the process relied entirely on imagination. If you imagined a bird, sword energy should, in theory, allow you to sculpt a bird out of stone. This way, she would synchronize her mind with her sword energy and stabilize it. It was a training method that attacked the problem from its roots, forcing her to confront every flaw in her control rather than relying purely on talent. Gray hadn't wanted to suggest it at first. Sculpture stones were expensive, and one would never be enough, but Leah had confidently declared it would be fine. She had even puffed out her chest and promised she'd master it quickly. Now, no, Leah screamed. I don't want to carve a bird anymore. You'll never comprehend sword control with that attitude. Gray gave her a bored look, almost as if he were suppressing a yawn. In truth, that was a lie. She had already made huge progress. At first, the moment she tried, the sculptures would break apart instantly because of her unstable sword energy. Counting this one, Albert had already brought in over 104 sculpture rocks. The pile of shattered stones in the corner of the room was enough to make a small hill, silently mocking her failures. But gradually, she gained enough control to at least shape something. Even if it ended up being a deformed cat instead of a bird, it was still improvement. There aren't even many birds in Nova City because of the city barrier and all the mutations. How do you expect me to memorize how a bird looks? Leah grumbled. It's not my fault. She crossed her arms, looking away like a sulking child. Excuses. Gray snorted. You won't be able to say the same thing in a life or death situation. Leah stuck out her tongue at him, her childish defiance only making Gray shake his head. Either way, you're not leaving until you finish carving a bird. Gray grinned wickedly, his teeth glinting faintly under the training room lights. You. Leah looked at him in horror. I have to go home. My dad will worry about me. Only leave after carving a bird. How was she supposed to do that when all her sculptures looked like deformed cats? The thought of her father's stern expression flashed in her mind, and she really wanted to cry. Just then, Albert chimed in from the side. Don't worry, Miss Leah. I've already informed your father that you're hard at training. He said you don't need to return home until you've completed your training. Quote. Leah's expression darkened immediately. It was the kind of look that promised murder, but Albert remained composed, pretending not to notice. Of course, Gray had his own reasons for dragging things out. While training with her, he was constantly gaining insights into her endless potential physique. His mind rang with endless notifications, to the point of irritation, every ding echoing in his head like a hammer. There was no way to mute his ability. At the same time, he realized something shocking: Leah's physique hadn't even fully awakened yet. The mere thought sent a shiver down his spine. She was already the top genius of Nova City without awakening. Once her physique truly awakened, wouldn't she surpass everyone else entirely? The gap between her and her peers might become something they could never hope to cross. At that moment, a man in a black suit entered the training room carrying another sculpture rock, his professional smile firmly in place. The way he moved, silent, efficient, without hesitation, was enough to show he had done this dozens of times already today. Outside, in the open training area, the other evolvers had long noticed the same suited men delivering endless sculpture stones into Gray and Leah's room. Naturally, curiosity was high, whispers spreading among the trainees like wildfire. Is she trying to become a professional sculptor? One evolver muttered in confusion, unable to wrap his head around it. Who knows? Rich and talented people like Miss Leah think differently from us middle-class folks. Come on, let's get back to training. I believe my chi blood can be refined further. I might finally reach the 3rd level of rank 1. Another replied with determination, unwilling to waste time gossiping. Meanwhile, Manager Victor and Secretary Celine were at the entrance, welcoming an esteemed guest, the head branch manager of the Evolvers Association in Nova City. Welcome, Head Branch Manager Desmond, Victor greeted the tall, stout old man with a long beard and white hair. His tone was respectful, bordering on reverence. Manager Victor, how are things in Sector 6? Desmond asked bluntly, skipping all pleasantries. The championship is coming up, and we need representatives from Nova City. This is the match between the geniuses of Nova City, Blue Spirit City, and Crimson City. It happens once a year, and the winners will receive extraordinary resources from the 3 city lords. They'll also qualify for the Champion League. I naturally know that, Manager Desmond, Victor replied with an awkward smile. I've been doing my best to recruit talents. He shifted slightly, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. Desmond nodded, but from the corner of his eye, he noticed a man in a black suit carrying a sculpture stone into one of the training rooms. For a moment, he was surprised. His sharp gaze lingered, interest flashing within. Someone from the City Lord's manor. Desmond raised an eyebrow. Could it be that one of the City Lord's children is tempering themselves here in Sector 6? It is little Miss Leah, Manager Desmond, Manager Victor explained, lowering his voice slightly. Hey, to think the City Lord would allow his precious daughter to train here. The world truly never ceases to surprise this old man. Desmond's lips curved into an amused smile, his beard trembling slightly as he chuckled. Back in the training room. If you manage to make a bird with this sculpture, you can go home. HMPH. Just you wait, Leah grumbled. I'll definitely get it right this time. Who do you think I am? I'm the proud genius of Nova City.